Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome back. It's Mia, and today we are discussing House of the Dragon episode 9. I already feel a little bit weird starting out. It's that time of year, so I'm feeling healthy. I'm not necessarily under the weather. I'm not necessarily above the weather right now, but I am the weather, so I sound weird to me. Maybe I don't sound weird to you all, but anyway, let's just talk about House of the Dragon episode 9. And I just want to say that it started out, or really the whole path of this episode, didn't really feel the way that I thought it was gonna go. Specifically with them, I guess, placing Aegon on the throne so quickly. I honestly thought that there was gonna be some sort of buffer period between King Viserys dying and then this whole war breaking out between, who is supposed to ascend to the throne. So, I mean, honestly, that could just be like duh knowledge if you have been, keeping up with the actual lore. But to me, it was a complete surprise that they had just made moves so quickly. And I think specifically what really, really caught me off guard was the fact that I thought Rhaenyra and her entire family were going to be in the castle as Viserys died, or it was just so weird because it's like, okay, thinking back to last week, right? They had the family dinner and things went fun, and then they went kind of crazy, and then Viserys on his deathbed telling Alicent about making Aegon the heir, and so then he dies, he breathes his last breath, and we dive into this episode immediately where they're receiving the news about the king's death. So I wish they had, at the very least, unless I missed this, made it clear that Rhaenyra and her family had left. Eventually they do say, talking about going over to Dragonstone and seizing them and all that stuff. But I don't know, anyway, I'll get off of that point. But I was just like, oh, well, if Rhaenyra is there, then, ooh, this is going to be crazy. So there still were some crazy things going on with this episode, or dramatic things. And particularly that being, I wasn't expecting to see so much, I guess, contention and drama within the Hightower side of the family, or on the Greens, as we're starting to call them. I honestly wasn't expecting to see everyone else begin to have kind of their own motive within this. So first of all, we have Alicent, and you know what? I'm not gonna lie, I actually did like her in this episode, and I think that's a result of what happened in the last episode, where her and Rhaenyra, like I said last time, they buried the hatchet. They were on pretty much good terms, and literally, if the king didn't die, I think they might have worked things out a little bit better. So Alicent basically grew from that, kind of realization. She came to this epiphany that, okay, I love the king loves Rhaenyra, and so if I love him, I have to respect who he loves. And then Rhaenyra kind of had basically the same realization. So I can understand why, when Alicent went to the High Council, why she's like, hey, listen, the king did tell me Aegon is supposed to be the heir, but we should extend some animosity to Rhaenyra and Daemon and all of her family because, it's what the king would want, right? And she's coming up, she's like, well, we should, have these terms and stuff. And I think her one flaw, though, was thinking that Rhaenyra is just going to outright accept her terms, with Aegon being the heir. And I mean, obviously that's true. We're going to see that Rhaenyra does not want Aegon to be heir. But Alicent, I think, was a little naive on that and thinking that Rhaenyra would just sort of, I guess, bend the knee to those terms, even though I feel like she herself was kind of like, well, Alicent might not do this, or Rhaenyra might not do this anyway. So I don't know, it was just kind of weird for her to be like, well, maybe. I think her whole thing was just trying not to outright kill Rhaenyra and Daemon, because then we have on the other side Otto Hightower, who is just like, let's just kill him, man. And not only that, they're planning, they had this whole secret council, which was kind of weird, like, oh, you guys were already planning this behind my back. And you would think it works to Alicent's favor, because at the end of the day, they all want Aegon to be on the throne, but at the same time, it was kind of like, oh, what are you guys up to? So anyway, in a way, I do think, like, Otto makes a good point, like, Rhaenyra and family are gonna fight back. Is it right to kill them? Absolutely not. But is for him, I can see why he would want that, so that they don't go opposed. But what I also did like about Alicent in this episode, speaking of, her and Otto, is the fact that she did realize, finally, right, the manipulation that Otto has been doing, or using her basically as his pawn. She was like, you're using me as a piece on a chessboard, or something like that. So yeah, good for Alicent for realizing that. But now it's kind of like, well, we already got Aegon on the throne, so is she going to use this realization in the future, to say, hey, Dad, could you please stop using me as your pawn to get what you want? Or I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where the relationship could go. Though on top of it, you have our sneaky daredevil Larys Strong, who just, likes to throw that wrench in the blender and do all sorts of crazy stuff. And of course, he reveals to Alicent that Otto has spies within, the castle, and he's got this whole network. And Larys was like, look, as someone who has personally killed his father as well, I think that the only way for you to eliminate this web is to eliminate the queen bee. I'm sorry if I offend you. And just kill Otto, man. So I don't know if Alicent is going to take him up on that. That seems very out of character for Alicent to want to have her father murdered. But I could see Larys also just kind of going out on his own and being like, well, I did it because you might have wanted it. So we shall see about that. Meanwhile, in the middle of this episode, we had this whole chase about, who's going to go get Aegon first. And I'm not necessarily sure what that accomplishes between Aegon speaking to Otto first or Aegon speaking to Alicent first. It seemed like a weird kind of rat race for them to try to, boost up some of the drama in the show. Like, as I think about it, like, oh yeah, who's gonna find Aegon first? But at the end of the day, what is he gonna do? Alicent wants him to be on the throne. Otto wants him to be on the throne. So, I think that was a bit of a weird sort of plot element to put in there. But what I did find more interesting was just this whole idea that Aegon legitimately did not want to be on the throne. He didn't want this. He even kind of was like, listen, bro, Aemon, I'll make a deal with you. Like, you just let me go far, far away and I'll let you have the throne. Because we did see that Aemon was like, well, I've been studying and I've been doing all my due diligence, like it should be for me. And so that's just one of those other layers that I was talking about. Like, it's kind of like a civil war, right? It's not just Aegon versus Rhaenyra, but now all of a sudden it's, okay, on this side of the family with the Greens, everyone all of a sudden has their own motive. The fascinating thing though was once we got to Aegon's coronation, Aegon was like depressed, he was mopey, he didn't want to be there. But then once he got crowned and he's in front of the crowd and that he lifts his sword in the air and everyone is cheering for him, it all of a sudden looks like he gets a little smug or a little cocky. So I'm wondering, will he like all of a sudden just happily accept his duties as the king because it's, I don't know, an ego thing? Like, yeah, he accepted his duty as the king because he showed up to his coronation, but it makes me wonder, okay, will he be a little bit more, I guess, more willing to work himself into the role if he can get this sort of ego satisfaction in return. And then not only that, someone like Aemon who was like, well, I deserve it more than you. How is he going to feel in reaction to his brother all of a sudden being like, well, maybe I do kind of really want it. And then not only that, but we also have a new generation of children, right? Helena and Aegon have their own 2 children that we saw briefly. So it just makes me wonder, okay, every single generation seems to be fighting amongst one another. We know it's going to go on for quite a while. So I'm like, oh, is this just, what's going to go on between those children as well? Like, how big is this going to blow up in everyone's faces? Okay, now let's move on to Rhaenys, who was a bit of a Rubik's Cube for me to solve this episode. She was full of surprises, and one of those being, she was still at the castle. I was like, okay, Rhaenyra left, but Rhaenys is still at the castle? Okay. But what really puzzled me the most was, why would Rhaenys give her allegiance to Team Rhaenyra versus siding with Alicent and Aegon, because, in a nutshell, Rhaenyra and Aegon are both still her family. I guess they would be cousins, but in a way it's almost as if they're her nieces and nephews. Cousins don't seem to be the right word, even though it technically is the right word, but right, they're still young ones in her family. And so the fact that Rhaenyra and Daemon have been kind of the cause of the downfall of her children, I'm like, she doesn't owe Rhaenyra anything. So it kind of made me wonder, okay, what is her motive for still choosing to be with Rhaenyra anyway, aside from, I guess, Otto and Cole locking her in her room and taking away, I guess, all of her people. And so I was like, okay, if she was mad at them for locking her away and being like, you can't leave this room until you pledge your allegiance to Aegon, I guess I get that. But then on top of that, let's talk about the big scene during the coronation, right? Rhaenys sneaks away to the dragon pit, has enough time to have her armor and all that, wield her dragon, fly in like it's Shrek, right in the middle of this big building, and then just kind of intimidate them, with her big dragon in front of them. I'm sure a lot of you were wondering, well, why didn't she just Dracarys all of them? And it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, why didn't she do that? Or just do like Shrek, where the dragon eats the king and it's like, now you're not king anymore. There were so many ways for her to do that, but to me, it all boils down to, well, I guess we wouldn't really have a season finale, right, if she ended up torching them. So funny enough, there actually is an explanation that one of the producers of House of the Dragon said, like, oh, why didn't she torch them? And it's kind of like, okay. Basically, in summary, they were like, she probably knew that she could, set peace throughout the realm, but she probably didn't want to do that, because then she'd end up killing another mother. So it's a complex choice, and one that the people might dispute or have a problem with, but that's the choice that Rhaenys makes at that moment. So to me, I don't know, it's kind of like, it doesn't really seem like the best. Like, I was trying to rationalize it in my head why she wouldn't want to do that, aside from just the fact that maybe she just doesn't want to kill and let Rhaenyra handle things. But yeah, it's like, if you are going to do that and intimidate them, I don't know, maybe she just wanted to give them a fair fight at fighting back. Maybe she's like, oh, this isn't my war. Whatever. She's got a stake in it too, let's be honest. So yeah, this means war for real. There's really no way around this. No one's gonna sit at a table and make peace treaties or anything like that. It's definitely gonna have to be full-on battle. And we see in that episode preview for episode 10, right, Rhaenys goes and tells Rhaenyra, and even her boys are like, we'll volunteer to fight. Oh, so cute. I hope they don't die. Yeah, that leads us to next week, which is the season finale. I can't believe it. And I have to say, though, it's kind of funny, though, because when I first started watching this, I was very concerned about the pacing for the show. It never felt fast to me, but I was just so concerned. It felt like we had, going like 80, 100 miles per hour, because we've got the Alicent and Rhaenyra, they're young, and then like 5 episodes in, and then they're old. And, just thinking about the progression, like Alicent goes from being a young woman in this season to, basically towards the finale being a grandmother. So I was always very concerned about, like, are we moving too fast in the series? And then I go see that George R.R. Martin is like, hey, I think we need at least 40 episodes to tell this entire series or this entire story. So that is assuring for sure, just to know that it seems like it seems like they're really on pace. I think, the pacing feels right. And so at the same time, it's like there's still so much story to tell. I'm like, please, I need season 2 right away. And so it kind of sucks that we're gonna have to wait, I'm assuming at least 2 years between, basically now and when season 2 will finally be ready, because that's just HBO. That's just the timeline that they operate on. So whatever cliffhanger they end on, I know it's gonna be really bittersweet. I'm hoping it's gonna be, fingers crossed, for a great episode, but the fact that we have to have a cliffhanger and, to see where the war is gonna go, that's gonna drive me crazy. So that is about all that I have to say. I'm going to leave it here, guys. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this discussion, and please let me know in the comments what you thought about this episode, what you thought about the pacing, what you think about Rhaenys. Should you have torched them? Should you have said Dracarys? she could have just ended it all. Or, you know, if you have any thoughts, comments, concerns about Laris and any activities that he is, I'm not even gonna finish it. Anyway, guys, I will see you next week in the finale. Subscribe so you know when that video is live, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.